Implicit bias is an unconscious association between the group and the trait that can affect how we think, feel, or behave. But we have to own the fact that we live in a certain society. And in the US, all groups are not perceived the same way. But we have to try to still do our part, be open. That's going to facilitate us healing ourselves as a nation. Implicit bias is a universal phenomenon that applies to all of us.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Shawndrea Thomas. I'm an anchor and reporter here at KGUN 9 News, and I'm hosting this town hall as a spinoff from the special that just ran called The Hidden Bias of Good People. And we're going to be talking about some issues that impact us and how we are affected by biases and things like that. I do have with me two very awesome ladies from the Tucson community. I have Ashley Russa from Roux Events and Blax Friday, and Isabel Georgelos with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you both for joining me. This is really awesome to have this conversation and to really kind of get some things out there, because I think, you know, it's a good conversation to have, especially with the time and the way things are changing in the world now. So thank you very much for joining me. So they just talked about implicit bias and kind of defined it. Do you believe that it is possible that we all have biases? I'll ask you, Ashley, first. What do you think?
Absolutely. In human nature, we all have biases, unconsciously or consciously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as far as the impact on how we kind of function, Isabel, what do you think about that? As far as how we make decisions about people that we encounter and how we see things, you know, in the world. Isabel, can you hear me?
Just like you said, it's universal. So absolutely, you're not maybe gonna yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. I can hear you.
So yes, it's universal. So you're gonna experience it throughout your life. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So you're gonna experience it throughout your life because it's universal, and I think at any given time, any one of us can experience it, or, you know, unconsciously, you know, act in that manner.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, let's talk about diversity, because I think the key to all of this is, like, you know, fighting stereotypes and things like that. How important do you think diversity is in a workplace for both of you? I know for me, because of the nature of what I do, we need a diverse newsroom because we talk about a lot of people, a lot of things every day. So we have to know a little bit about a lot of things, you know, on a regular, but also just having the different perspectives and mindsets of people, you know, and lifestyles and all those things, and just kind of being able to accept and understand people. What do you guys think about that? Because I think that's the key to kind of moving along and changing our society to really have a more open mindset about the things that are happening around us and the changes that are happening that we can't stop. They're inevitable. Ashley?
Exactly.
Ashley?
Yes, I was just saying that's so very true. I'm happy that you brought that up when it comes to diversity. Firstly, representation means the world to be able to go into a space and feel as though you can be aligned with others. And then also diversity itself will help us and lead us towards empathetic approaches. And so as we understand ourselves, we get to understand others better as well.
Mm-hmm. Isabel, what are your thoughts on that?
I have to echo Ashley. You know, people want to see themselves reflected, and that not only helps with creating understanding, but learning as well. And, you know, when I see it in different, you know, aspects, it also leads to even more exciting things like innovation, you know, and you said it's happening already. It's how we start to embrace and start to learn.
Mm-hmm. And I'm one of those people, you know, I'm curious by nature. That's why I do what I do. I think I'm just so nosy, but I have a tendency to ask a lot of questions about things, be it a religious question about food, question about culture, question about clothing, hair, whatever the case may be. I'm just one of those people who wants to know and understand. And I think some people are fearful of that. Sometimes are fearful of asking the questions. Have you guys ever encountered, I guess, the vice versa, or just kind of, or having to explain things to someone to help them understand the culture or anything like that? Isabel, What do you think?
Actually, yes, just because as much as things have changed, if I were to go back, I can share different experiences where, I had to, just something as simple as, oh, I like your tan. And, actually it was dead of winter and I didn't have one, even though I like it when I do. Or, just, creating an understanding of your culture, or food, or, just that curiosity, like, do you eat tamales all the time? I think there's always been some of those biases, that people start to think that's the way you live. So, and then we don't have to look any further than, TV shows, and how, we could be depicted. So yeah, it's something, that you experience, and we keep looking forward, hoping to see, ourselves reflected in different lights. So absolutely.
Yeah. Ashley, what do you think?
Yes, I just want to completely say, I want to echo what Isabel is saying, because yes, it's important, in representation, and then being able to not only speak for others that may not have a voice to be amplified, but open the doors for that access. So accessibility. So as we're having these conversations about certain individuals that may not feel comfortable with having these conversations that deal with biases and race, understanding that, knowing that we're each individuals with different ways that we communicate. It's better to come towards this type of work with an open mind and an open heart and a goal. And that goal being to unify us all through love, empathetically.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, and the whole idea of having bias, right? It's not something that you're born and then you just instantly have these things. I think it's more of a concentration of like your experiences, and we're bombarded with information, right? From TV to the radio to the internet to driving down the street. We get all these messages all day long, everywhere, all the time. So, so what do you think about the idea of that? Do you think that is how we're shaped? As far as like our opinions of people and stereotypes that come out of that stuff?
Oh, yes, indeed. We are influenced by our surroundings. And so that can be both good and bad. If we're not able to expose ourselves to different diverse experiences or being able to hear the stories of diverse individuals, then we're not really being able to grasp the full human story. And then the disadvantage in that is that we may feel safe within certain circles, but we need to explore outside of that circle to truly get to know human nature.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big key is really getting out of your comfort zone, yes. When it comes to exploring things like that. Isabel, have you had, that experience as far as like kind of jumping out of what you normally typically would do and kind of going into like a different culture or learning something new? And how did you feel about it?
Absolutely. And, there's always going to be that moment of uneasiness if you're experiencing something new, but then as Ashley said, there's the learning and the appreciation that you can have, along the lines of what she shared. We have to remember our experiences inform our thinking, and it's that thinking that drives behaviors. So, the more we experience, the more we explore and learn, the broader our thinking is, the more open we are and more empathetic.
Mm-hmm. And something interesting that that I was thinking about too, as far as like biases, like when it comes to where people come from, the part of the country, think about that for a second, right? Let that sit. When it comes to the idea of like someone from the South, the North, California, they think everyone from California, I grew up there for a little while. We say dude and surf. Like I say dude, but I don't surf. But you know what I mean? However, but there are these, like it's something that's simple, right? But it's like, have you ever, I guess, thought about that type of thing? Like, oh, this person is from there, or experienced that, and kind of recognizing yourself, like, whoa, people from down south, people say soda. People who say soda say pop, say tomato, tomato, however you want to say it. What do you think about that? I guess that perspective of like regions of where people come from and kind of like the idea that we think of people depending on where they grew up.
Absolutely, and great point, Shawndrea, because I've had an opportunity of being born in Texas, so being born in the South, and then being able to travel as far as Florida, my first internship. And so really starting to build this dynamic of seeing diverse individuals from different states in the nation. And then I ended up doing, a summer in the Berkshires and in New York. And so again, another group and a culture to be exposed to and experiences. And you're absolutely right. It's our dialect, it's how we frame our sentences and things that we focus on, and our foods and our culture and our music. If we could truly get to the point of, to what Isabel was saying, celebrating these cultures and these differences, instead of it being something that's negative or something that we shamefully go, that accent or that type of food, and being more of, oh, what a unique plate, or what an interesting dialect you have. So I really feel as human beings, if we can really get to that point of appreciation versus the negative side, that's growth.
Absolutely. And Isabel, and that's a question I want to bring to you as well, especially considering where we are. We're close to the border. People are going to have stereotypes about people who are crossing over and things like that. What is your take on changes and perspectives? I think that need to be looked at when it comes to how people view folks who are coming over here, because I think there's so much negativity, and and there's people who embrace as well, of course. But what is your take on that?
First, I think we think about everybody as human beings. There's a story behind every person trying to pursue a dream, and it's not even about what should be done in terms of laws and everything else. It's just about can we just first start with people are human beings, and everything is based on an impact of something else. So this is a reaction to something globally, and so we need to consider that. It doesn't mean that we ignore everything else, but I think by embracing and understanding human suffering, challenges, and why people want to pursue and be in the United States can at least help us work on, what should we do? What should we create that is better for our communities and for other people just trying to do better? Let's start there. So that's, the first thing I would say. The other is to understand that not everyone comes from Mexico. People come from all over. That just happens to be a route. And we need to understand that too. So, it's diverse. There are needs throughout this entire world. It just happens to be happening in our backyard. But I will say this, learning about communities, Nogales didn't used to have a border. People would cross back and forth all the time. Communities have lived side by side for, hundreds of years. So, people looking from the outside may see that and see this huge turbulent situation, but, people living there in that community love their community. So learning a little bit more and then seeking to understand what is driving these situations. And that can help guide other things that need to happen. Absolutely. But first, let's start with people.
And Dr. Marsh talked about stereotypes and how exhausting it is for Black people to try to disprove stereotypes. Like for me, there's a stereotype Black people are always late. So I always make it a point for myself to be extra early for things. That's just the reality, right? And so with that being said, have you ever had, and this goes for both of you, have you ever had the experience where you've had to correct someone on a stereotype and they were enlightened and grew from it? Or was it a situation where it was just like, it was a lost cause, I guess, is the question. Ashley?
Absolutely. Since schoolyard days, there's a number of examples I could share, but I won't go into detail here. There's not enough time. But definitely, whenever there's an opportunity, especially speaking As a Black woman, as a Black queer woman, if I can correct any stereotype that is focused towards myself, then I will. And I encourage others to speak out for themselves as well. We do get into trouble if we try to stand up for someone else who needs to stand up and use their voice for themselves. So I always encourage, when you're coming from a place of I, and you're coming from your experience, like when I said, I am a Black woman, I am a Black queer woman, I'm then able to share experiences from that lens and not a monolithic lens, and saying the Black community and stereotypes. So as we're able to distance ourselves away from the collective idea of individuals, the better we'll be, my view.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Let's get into this term, Isabel. The term Latinx, Hispanic, Latino. Can you help me with that? Because I feel like even though, my husband, half of his family is Hispanic, or is that even the right term to use, right? So I'm trying to figure out, Latinx is a term that's kind of started to emerge. So I'm trying to, I guess, educate myself and others, hopefully, who are watching this, about what the terms mean, how they should be used, and what's the right way to use them.
People will tell you. I mean, I think that's the thing is, that in this conversation is, let people tell you, let people express themselves. And, we're not a monolith. We're diverse. We share our roots in the Latin, origination of the Latin language, but, South America has Venezolanos, Argentinos, Peruanos. I mean, they're diverse. And it's the same in Mexico. There's Mexico and there's Puerto Rico, Spain. We're all different. What Latinx is a current term used by many Latinos who are just wanting to be gender neutral. So Latinx comprises everybody, and it depends. I think numbers show that about 3% of our community likes Latinx, but it's just a way of identifying. I have friends that still want to be known as Chicanas, and that's fine. I like Mexican American because I define myself as first generation Mexican American. But I mean, it just depends, and it's important to let people tell you who they are. And that's part of the getting overcoming biases is learning about people and letting them share their story.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the best solution to that is to ask.
Yes.
Just ask.
Don't be afraid to ask. Very good. So Dr. Marks talked about there was like a survey of sorts, right? So there were terms like that referred to Black males. When you think of a Black male, you think of the words dangerous, criminal, angry, aggressive, scary, rapper, basketball, athlete. Do you think that news coverage affects a big part of that? And I'll also ask you, Isabel, when we get to your community, those terms, do you think those are terms that people put on you guys as well, along with others? But from the standpoint of I guess, looking at that, do you think the media and how media handles things is a big part of where that, I guess, mindset comes from, or it's just a piece of the puzzle, I guess?
You hit it on the head there. Absolutely. Media biases are very real. We see this historically when we look at films, the silent film Birth of a Nation, which led to a number of lynching of Black men during Jim Crow. Again, all on an ideal of what fear and what someone decided to be stereotyped as for Black men. So yes, indeed. And we see it to this very day. And we see it in our ads, and we see it in movies and films. Now, thankfully, with more representation in directors and artists and technicians, we're really able to gain back our stories and tell our own stories. And then again, show the sphere of different people, when it comes to the Black community. It's, again, not just one type of individual. So yes, to answer your question quickly, yes, media biases are very real.
Mm-hmm. Isabel, what about from your perspective and from your community? Are those terms that people associate as well, along with other things?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, you see it in news. Bad news sells faster than good news. So it's unfortunate, and even how parts of our city are described. South Tucson, it's equated with bad. Yet it's a beautiful, thriving community. With businesses that have started from nothing and are creating and contributing to the economy. But it's really easy for it to be perpetuated the opposite, right? So it is unfortunate. And, if you keep sending that message, that's all people have to inform themselves on.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, looks like I just got word that we have a question. So let's see if we can bring up the question from someone who's actually watching our stream right now. Of course, we all have biases, but sometimes people are not aware of how biased they are. And that's the part of it too. So it could be good, bad. You may not be aware of it, but the key is to really stop and think about how. And this is just my opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm not a social scientist, but I'm thinking the key is to really check yourself and think about how you respond to people, how you respond to situations, and how you really, how you grow. And I know it's a process. It's not something that instantly can be fixed, right? It's more of like a marathon, it sounds like.
Absolutely. This is for life,
Yeah.
And you brought up the perfect point. Step one, introspection. How am I viewing others? And then truly be able to address it when you're talking in conversation with others and maybe dealing with some of their biases. Yes, it's every day and you're improving and it's fluid. We're never done. It's never a check. We've completed it. We know how to be better people. It's always growing. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Isabel?
I have to agree. Something, I don't know about the presentation, but I love Dr. Marks and how he made you feel comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And that's part of it. It's an ongoing process, and you can't start by thinking you don't have them. I have them. We all do. It's just being cognizant of it and working on it by putting yourself in situations that are different. Different is okay. Learning is okay, and you might be surprised. You start to appreciate the differences, which is where we'd all like to be, because I think you said at the beginning, it's change is happening. So it's more about how we embrace and learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Now, from the perspective of the Tucson community, I've been here for a couple of years almost now. What do you think are the biggest issues with diversity, with inclusion, with equity, those particular things? This goes for both of you. What do you think those things are, and how can we fix it?
I'll start just with some issues.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Positively, I'm seeing now within the last year, a lot of things being addressed, conversations, sessions, facilitations happening, not only with staff, but also stakeholders as well as your board. And so it's promising, it's educational. People are encouraged now to be able to speak about oppressions and race specifically within the workplace. And it still be HR, approved and correct, but more of an availability to get to know each other. And so again, a celebration. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Isabel?
Again, it's appreciation. My mind just keeps going to that. And I in my past, I just always have experiences where I've been around different people and the value that brought to my life experience, my work experience, and it's been formed by diverse people. And it's still tough to think about that we're still working on it, but it is where it's where we are. The good news is like Ashley brought up, is we're in the midst of change, and I think it's significant. And I think it's, situations like this, forums like this, where you can come together and talk about it openly and have, discourse. That's the start. And because it's about creating understanding. So I think we're in an incredible place, but I think it's upon all of us to continue to ask for it. Does that make sense?
Yep, it absolutely does. And I think it's also important, I think, for us to be able to accept our own biases, to accept someone giving us insight into how we think about things, and not be offended by everything all the time, right? And just kind of really absorb it and stop for a second and think about why that person said, that particular thing to us. So, it looks like we have another question. Okay, go ahead and pop that question up from Ingrid. Okay, honest individual introspection is learning about yourself and hopefully becoming better, open-minded, accepting, and understanding, being an understanding person. And that's a big key to it as well. I think the more conversations we have, the more open people can be. I remember there was one time I worked with an individual, and I admit I had a bias because I had an idea of where this person grew up, and I thought it was a white male, and I assumed certain things about him. On the flip side of that, he assumed things about me. And so we were always like this. And it took a diversity training at my job. And I ask you guys if you experienced that in a second. It took a diversity training at work for us to really talk about that. And we had a conversation about those differences and where those things came from. And we both realized we had preconceived notions about each other. And so once we got through all of that and really had a really good conversation about it, we were good. We were good after that. But all it took was a 10-minute conversation to fix something that was going on for like months of stress and like frustration that wasn't really necessary. So maybe sometimes it's just a matter of like offering that olive branch to say, hey, you know what, let's talk about this really quick, and be open to receiving what people tell you about yourself. Because a lot of times people are kind of put up that wall and they don't want to dealing with themselves. But sometimes we have to break that stuff down and really have talks with people, So as far as like, let's say diversity training, I'm guessing you guys have experienced that at your jobs, but was it because the company wanted it, or was it because the incident sparked it? That's the question. And did it help? I'll go to you, Ashley. You have an expression on your face. Let me see.
Yes, I've been through a number of trainings and facilitations and sessions throughout my nonprofit employment rather. And now I'm having the opportunity to start to really create and build my own facilitations in DEI. So to answer your question, absolutely. And did it all usually come about with an incident? Yes. There was an incident, and then we needed trainings, as it were. What I found is that it seemed that it was oppressed. Instead of it being more collective, that we wanted to do this and wanted to be a part of it, it was a do this. And I think whenever you have that sort of approach with anyone, we're resistant as human beings to going, I don't want to just do it. What are we doing? And so I think when we start to do this work, again, coming empathetically, coming authentically, and really giving an opportunity for individuals to express their true selves and all of their biases.
Mm-hmm. Isabel?
Yes, in my past life, I've had to do it because it was part of the expectation and because there were incidents. I would be remiss not to say there weren't. I think again, understanding the reality of those things and bringing them up and forward, so that we could learn from them was important. I was able to see changes in the places I worked and challenges, because again, I was lucky to work in diverse places and states, and you get to see things, you get to see people's perspectives and how they're perceiving things, and just learning from that was important. But I think also too, a big piece of it was learning how to communicate. That's what drove a lot of, misunderstandings, frustration, which would build on even further and create unhealthy environments. And that's not good for anybody. So learning to navigate that was important, but also too, the importance that it's an ongoing process. You have to keep at it and, find ways to keep learning and sharing.
All right, and that's a great way to kind of end. It's like we're wrapping up. Our time is winding down, but the whole idea that, yeah, I know time flew by, right? I think the thing I think, and collectively thinking about everything that's been said, is that we have to take the time to listen, to learn, and to open ourselves up to learning about others and accepting information about ourselves and being okay with that. So any other last words that you each want to leave the public with regarding this or anything? Ashley?
Yes, I just encourage, again, the courageous conversation approach. A shout out to Glenn Singleton with the approach of just having these interracial opportunities and dialogue authentically and openly.
Mm-hmm. Isabel? Isabel, can you hear me? Oh, it looks like she froze up a little bit. Oh, there you go. There you go. I just wanted to know if you had any last comments for our discussion.
Just a big thank you for being inclusive in having this conversation and bringing us all together, and the experience of it. These are the things that we grow from. So thank you for leading this, and thank you, Ashley. Great.
Yes, thank you, Shawndrea.
Yes, thank you both for joining me tonight. Now, let me just give the folks some more information. If they didn't see the special tonight, The Hidden Bias of Good People, we are re-airing the series or the special on March 13th at 10:30 p.m. on both the CW Tucson and KGUN 9. By the way, I do anchor CW Tucson Monday through Friday, 9 o'clock. Yes, I just threw that in there. And
good.
Right. So if you didn't get a chance to see the special tonight, you can check it out again on the 13th at 10:30 p.m. All right. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you very much for participating and watching with all of us. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.